Welcome back, boxing fans, to another great show with Sean on Boxing. Today, we're going to look at ESPN's 2025 edition of Fighters Under 25, the top 25 of them. Obviously, as is normal nowadays, women are included on men's lists. Um, this is not my choice because I would think you would make a list for women and a list for men because none of the women listed would be able to beat any of the men. So it doesn't make sense putting them on the list, but this is ESPN's list. And we know ESPN is one of the most woke networks in American TV. So no shock, no surprise there. So who do you think is the best fighter under 25 currently in boxing? A lot of this comes down to where you're from. If you're from the UK or if you're from the US, your perspective is going to probably be very different. But nonetheless, both fighters that will be mentioned later on are both great fighters and both deserve to be on this list. So let's get to it. ESPN, thank you for using your fine work to share with me. So let's break this down. Okay, just let me go there. How? So first off, let's break it down. So as I mentioned, obviously, one of the top fighters in boxing is UK fighter, top heavyweight prospect who is just signed to fight Jermaine Franklin in what's going to be a very good step-up fight. Jermaine Franklin has been in with both Anthony Joshua and Dillian White and has given both of those fighters really good tests. So it's going to be interesting to see what the 20-year-old is able to do. And that's the thing about Moses Atoma. He may be number one on this list now, but he's also the youngest guy probably on this list, or at least the second youngest at only 20. Moses Atoma currently 13-0 with 11 KOs, coming off of a fantastic victory versus Dillian White in his last fight. He's moved up the rankings. Obviously, last year he was number 10. This year he's number 1 because he has stepped up and become much more of a name and a face to heavyweight boxing. Actually, there's a lot of people currently that are talking about him potentially fighting Alexander Usyk for his unified heavyweight titles. For me, I think there's no rush. You don't need to be moving a man that quick. I would think a fight with newly crowned champion Wardley is probably a better fight to have later in 2026, obviously after the Franklin fight. That would be a huge fight in the UK. You'd be getting two of the top young fighters from the UK matching up. I think that would be a can't miss slugfest. Sorry, my beard is like tickling me. Let's go to number 2. At number 2, I was kind of surprised that Brian Norman, he is 24 years of age, that he was number 2 on this list because he is a little older, and you would say his upside may be a little lower than some potential other fighters that may be mentioned later. Obviously, he's coming off of a fantastic year, scoring 2 sensational knockout victories, and I can see why that was probably be one reason why he's getting a lot of attention on this list. And currently, he's scheduled to fight this weekend against Devin Haney, which if he wins that, well, shit, then you could catapult him to number 1 this list because then he would be the biggest under 25 fighter in boxing, a fighter who would not just be a world champion, but obviously beat a pound for pound level opponent in one of his title defenses. That shit would be serious. Brian Norman's a fun fighter, very exciting, similar to Moses Atoma, both very powerful, explosive fighters, 28 wins, 22 KOs, and obviously everybody remembers his victory versus Jin Sasaki earlier this year, which was a scary knockout, scary. Then we get to one of the women at number 3. I mean, yes, Gabrielle Funduro in women's boxing. She's probably the most exciting young up-and-coming fighter in women's boxing. Only 23, very tall and long like her brother, but a lot more exciting and a lot more dominant in women's boxing than her brother is in men's boxing. So I can see her getting praised as one of the top female fighters and definitely potentially one of the best fighters in women's boxing down the road. Then we get to Diego Pacheco. Also a little surprised that he is this high on the list. Um, I like Diego Pacheco. I like him a lot, far better than Gabriel Fonduro's brother. But the problem I have with him is it seems as if his team is maneuvering him a little more and not necessarily putting him in the fights that would really prove how good he is, right? 24-0, 18 KOs, a guy that's been very exciting. But his career is kind of stalled over the last year and a half, fighting guys like Trevor McCumbee and Steven Nelson. Neither of those fights grabbed anyone's attention. A fight versus Solecki, again, another fight that didn't grab anyone's attention. Obviously, he's got a dangerous fight coming up versus Kevin Lele Sajo, a very powerful French fighter with great knockout pedigree of his own right and a much more experienced older fighter. But in the U.S., where Pacheco is based, nobody knows who Kevin Lele Sajo is. Hardcore fans, many of them, probably don't know who Kevin Sajo is. So it's not really the kind of fight that's going to elevate him and really make him a household name, right? And this is a division that has a lot of big name opponents. If he was fighting a Caleb Plant, that would be more significant than a Sajo, a Solecki, a McCumbee, or a Nelson. Yes, Plant's coming off of a loss, but nonetheless, Plant has name recognition. People would really know who he was, and they'd see Pacheco versus Plant, and people would be intrigued by that matchup. With this fight, for me and you, sure, we are excited about it because Sajo is dangerous. And it's going to be an interesting matchup. Obviously, Sajo is a Mike Tyson-esque type of fighter, short, stocky, and Pacheco is a very long, rangy fighter. So it'll be interesting to see who is going to be able to establish their style in this fight. And obviously, you would expect the longer, rangier fighter to succeed in that respect. Look at fucking Showbiz with Bam Rodriguez. Showbiz getting all this, and he's just too corny, man. That's the thing about him. Down to his hairstyle, the dude's just too corny. Too corny. At number 5, we have newly crowned WBO champion Xander Zayas, 22-0 with 13 KOs, 23 years old, and he's in one of the other most exciting divisions in boxing, 154. Obviously, we know there was a big back and forth between him and Virgil Ortiz. We know now he's going to be stepping in to fight WBA world champion Barao from Germany to unify titles, and that should give him a lot of credit right there. This is a newly crowned world champion who in his first title defense is taking on another champion to unify titles. You got to ask yourself, what are guys like Funduro doing? He's been there around for a long time now and has shown no inclination to unify against anyone. Actually, because he dropped his title to duck Xander Zayas, this is what allowed Xander Zayas the opportunity to become the WBO champion. So, hats off to Zayas. He's doing what he should be doing. It's just unfortunate in that division. It looks like politics might potentially be killing some of the big fights in that weight class. Boots, Ortiz, others. At number 6, you get Abdullah Mason. And I know I always say his name wrong because Abdullah, the way I think people pronounce it, just sounds strange to me. So I'm going to pronounce it Abdullah, even though there's no A at the end. He is 19-0 with 17 KOs, one of the most exciting, young, and up-and-coming American prospects in boxing. And a guy that I thought, realistically, probably should have been number 2 on this list, right? Unlike the other guys, he's not currently a world champion, but he is going to be fighting this weekend, matter of fact, to win that WBO title that obviously Keyshawn Davis was stripped of for missing weight, and fighting a good British fighter in Sam Noakes, a fight that most people feel Abdullah Mason is just going to be too much for that kid. Abdullah Mason, 21 years of age. Obviously, he was 3rd last year, and he slipped this year. And I don't know why he slipped, because his performances have still been stellar. He's been explosive, dominant. So is this because he got knocked down twice against Joan Vasquez? I mean, these are part of what happens when you're a young fighter, sort of the learning curve to being in with higher level opponents. But what you got to look at is how he dealt with getting knocked down twice. He ended up getting up and beating Vasquez convincingly, right? That's what a great fighter does. So I think he's probably too low on this list from my perspective. But let me know in the comment section below what you think. I know some Americans have him number one overall, even above Moses Otoma. Then we get Jesus Ramos. See, this is a guy who's actually went up the rankings, while Abdullah Mason went down. But the irony is the guy that should have slipped down is Jesus Ramos Jr. He recently has been in a big fight against Erickson Lubin, which he lost. And it was a very disappointing performance. He went in there and basically stuck in second gear the whole fight, never showed any inclination to move through the gears, put pressure on on Lubin, and try to win, which potentially would have put him into a world title fight, right? Instead of doing that, he ended up staying in second gear, being sort of led by the nose by Lubin. And after that loss, what did he do? Try to get redemption? No, he's moved up to one of the weakest divisions in boxing, middleweight, 160 pounds. And he's fighting a weak opponent in his next fight in Shane Mosley Jr., a guy who hasn't really been relevant his whole career, right? So I look at that and I'm like, really? You think this is significant? Like, no one's talking about this fight because it's insignificant. Like, this is a division where a 42, 43-year-old fucking Lara is a WBA champion, right? I mean, there's opportunities for world title fights, and you're fighting a guy who, is like clearly a rung below the top fighters in boxing at 160 pounds. And the division of 160 is really a rung below most of the other divisions in boxing. So what does that say? I mean, you move from 154, one of the best divisions in boxing, to go to a division that's really void of real competition. I don't understand it, but yeah, I wouldn't put him this high on my list. He would definitely be below the top 10. At number 8, another Japanese fighter moving up the ranks, Takayami, 10-0 with 8 KOs, a junior flyweight contender, 23 years of age. We know these young guys in these divisions, especially Japanese fighters, really get moved quickly, right? Obviously, he won a big fight, a flyweight title, when he stopped Eric Rosa in July, becoming a world champion inside, in 10 fights. And obviously, he is going to be trying to unify world titles against Rene Santiago this December 17th. I mean, for a kid 23 years of age trying to unify titles, it's kind of like Xander Zayas. These dudes aren't fucking around. They are cherry picking easy opponents to try to fill their banks full of money. They're going after real competition, fighting other world champions. And you got to take your hats off to that, because you have some fighters like Tank Davis, as an example, who's never done that, right? He'd rather chase the bag with a social media personality than actually try to beat legitimate champions and build his legacy, right? For this young Japanese fighter, I can't say I'm very familiar with him, but whenever I see a young Japanese fighter doing well in the sport, obviously I'm happy to see it. And Takayami, he's not in an easy fight against Santiago, as you can see here. Other very highly rated Japanese fighter, Awata, and I remember that card specifically, fought Santiago to try to become a world champion inside 10 fights of his own, and ended up getting beat by Santiago. So for Takami to go in there, he's trying to, get redemption for his Japanese brother. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Then we get Floyd Schofield, who they say has moved up the ranks. Again, I don't know how a guy who ducked a Shakur Stevenson fight and just recently ducked another fight is somehow moving higher up the list. I mean, this is a guy who, with the biggest opportunities available to him, he's ducked them. After agreeing to both fights, he's ended up somehow finding a way to not make those fights. Obviously, he had a spectacular performance this year as well, beating Tevin Farmer in a first round knockout, right? But guys like this, you can see what they're trying to do. They're not chasing the best guys, they're not chasing titles. He's hoping that Tank Davis moves out of the division or gets stripped by the WBA and he gets elevated to become a WBA champion. Not beating someone to become a champion, but hoping to be emailed a title, right? And it's hard to respect people that move that way, especially when they have other alternatives in front of them. He could have fought Shakur, a pound for pound fighter, for the WBA title. And if he would have beat him to become champion, people would have been fucking cheering him loud and clear. But sitting around waiting for someone to be stripped or to vacate his title so you can be elevated, I mean, that's weak sauce. That's some weak shit right there. It's not something that people should be proud of. You're just using the system. This is literally the business of boxing. And it's really why boxing is, really died over the last few decades. Let's move through it. So then we get to Adam Azim, one of the hottest young prospects from the UK. Azim, 14-0, 11 KOs. He's just coming off of a very good performance the other week. Obviously, he's a guy right in contention for the big fights at 140 pounds. The thing about him is, is he going to be another one of these European-level British fighters, or is he a cut above? Obviously, the way he beat Scooby was a great performance. Scooby's a really good fighter, and I knew him against Scooby was going to be a legitimate fight. And the way he dominated and beat Scooby was something to be excited about. And I'm always excited when UK fighters do well, because obviously having boxers from around the world that are doing great things in the sport, building their fan bases, becoming stars, is great for boxing overall. So, a few more great young British fighters, especially not heavyweights, but fighters in other divisions, is a definite plus for boxing. So hats off. Hopefully he does well. Then we get to one of the most exciting young Latin fighters in the US, Ernesto Machado, 17-0, 16 KOs on the outside looking in. This guy is exactly what you want to see. One of those knockout punchers with heavy hands. But so far, he's been moving very slow, very slow. He's 24, so he's one of the older fighters on this list. And obviously he's in a great division, 135. So the question is, when is he going to get, or 140, depending on what division he's going to fight at, when is he going to get one of these legitimate high-level fights and a potential world title, right? To see really how good he really is. At this point, I've seen a few performances of his that have been good, a few that have been a little So we don't really know how good he's going to be, but so far he looks great on paper. The knockout percentage is exciting, but we got to see what he does when he steps up his level of opposition. And that's going to be the real determining factor of what we're going to think about Ernesto moving forward. But I hope he does well. More top fighters in the US, again, just like in the UK. Great for boxing. Then we get Daniel Dubois' sister, Caroline Dubois, 11-0, 1 draw, 5 KOs. Obviously, decorated team, UK team, Olympic team. She's done very well so far in her career as a women's pro. Then we get to probably one of the most exciting fighters in boxing. Obviously, Abdullah Mason is probably the guy that's seen as the best upside and probably the guy that's going to potentially do the most. But when you look at Emiliano Vargas, he's a guy that's a close second. And what Emiliano has that so far Abdullah Mason doesn't have is much more of a ring personality, much more of a outgoing personality and a little bit of flair and a little bit of swag. Obviously, Mason and his family are very, Christian, well brought up kids, a little more quiet. They let most of their fists do their talking in the ring, which I respect. I got no problem with people that do that. But we know in this modern social media age, sometimes the wheel that doesn't squeak doesn't get the oil. Emiliano Vargas is the opposite. He's much more of one of these kids from today who's on social media. He's definitely his father's son. So he's definitely out there talking a lot. And his performance this past weekend was great. I heard people literally criticize him, but I'm like, he was in with a fighter who's never been knocked out, who's went the distance with two really good previous opponents. Obviously, if Vargas was able to beat him, it would have been a real statement fight. And I mean, stop him, but he wasn't able to stop him. But he beat him convincingly. And I think for him and his growth as a fighter, really that's the kind of fight a guy like him needs. Not a one-round knockout. A one-round knockout against a guy who's just, you know, overmatched is not going to help him progress and prepare him for what he's going to have to deal with in the future. You fight a tough, rugged veteran fighter that knows how to fucking last and knows how to make things difficult for you in the ring. Now you got to start adjusting. You show that you can go the distance. You got to pace yourself. You got to learn how to set traps. You got to be a little more creative offensively and defensively. You know, you're gonna have to fucking be on your P's and Q's for the whole fight. So truthfully, I think it was a great thing for him, and I expect him to get better because of it. But he's definitely one of the more exciting young fighters coming out of the U.S. Then you got David Cuellar, 29-1, 18 KOs, one of these tough Mexican fighters, 24 years old. A guy like him who people don't even know who this kid is, right? But yet, you know, you go out there, you give people tough fights, and you prove that you are a real fighter. Obviously, here, Cuellar lost his unbeaten record when he got knocked out by Junto Nakatani. But Junto Nakatani is potentially a once in a lifetime type of prospect from Japan. Obviously, a pound for pound ranked fighter. So for this kid to get stopped by him, it's not the end of his career. Actually, it's one of those situations where you can learn from it. And obviously, Junto is moving out of the bantamweight division, which is going to open up more opportunities for you down the road and potentially give you chances to prove that you are a good fighter. So we'll see. We know Mexico is always producing really tough fighters, a lot of guys that are underestimated, but end up surprising. We'll see if he's able to do that moving forward. Elijah Garcia, one of the top PBC prospects, a kid that I watched early in his career, and I thought technically, maturity-wise, he was really fucking good. 17-1, 13 KOs. That record should be 16-2. He basically lost back-to-back fights where the PBC did not really put him in fights that were made for his style, but fights that were going to be difficult, fights that were going to challenge him and test him, which in the long run might be perfect for him. But for a young fighter getting beat and going through these kind of problems early, we'll see how that works out for him. I like Elijah Garcia, but I don't know if having fights with Kyron Davis and then Terrell Guasha back to back is really the best way to have maneuvered him, right? Obviously, he's moved up, but you know, I definitely thought a lot of the luster has fallen off of him. But at only 22 years of age, he's still super young, right? 22. You look at a guy like Erickson Lubin, he got knocked out, I think, at 21 by Charlo, and then continued to challenge for world titles all the way to just 2 weeks ago. And what is he now, like 32, 34? So, you know, it didn't stop him from having a very productive, profitable career. So for Elijah Garcia, similar things might be happening. And we know he's a middleweight, and that division is not too deep. So opportunities are there for him. Can he capitalize? We will see. Then we get Jin Sasaki, the 24-year-old Japanese fighter, both losses by KO. Obviously, 17 KO wins and 19 wins. A very exciting Japanese fighter. But as I said going into that ring, defensively, he's not good at all. He's too easy to get hit. He relies too much on his own power to overwhelm opponents. And that was easy to predict, that if your power is not able to have an impact on your opponent, then you're probably going to get knocked out. just like he did against fellow countryman. What's his face? His name escapes me right now. 140-pound fighter who's going to be fighting. Uh, oh, WBA world champion. What's his name? Gary Russell. So he beat him obviously before, which was a great young up and coming Japanese power puncher versus Japanese power puncher. Them meeting at that point of their careers. We wish we'd see more of that in the U.S. Obviously, that happened in Japan. What's his face? Beat Jin Sasaki, who went on to pummel a lot of overmatched opponents until he earned a world title fight and fucking scarily got flatlined. So, that guy's going to have to really improve his fucking defense if he wants to move forward in the sport of boxing, or just continue to fight low-level opponents and feast on them, which may be what he does in Japan. Then you get Gio Lopez, 18-0, 12 knockouts, 22-year-old fighter. Obviously another Reynoso pupil, a guy that looks good, quick, skilled. He shows a very good maturity in the ring. Obviously trains also with Canelo Alvarez, which hopefully he'll be learning a lot from a potential Hall of Famer. Then we get to Callum Walsh, the 15-0, 11 KO Irishman, who's basically been based on UFC cards, right? That's why a lot of boxing fans didn't know him when he was just recently on that big card, because he's never really been on boxing cards. He's always been on UFC boxing cards, which is obviously a different demographic and a different sort of fan base, to be truthful. But to be fair, I thought his performance was pretty disappointing against Lopez's brother. I thought it was a good matchup. You put two young kids together, both of them with some name recognition. Obviously, Lopez's brother, Callum Walsh, and this is a real test to see who's more prepared to move forward. Obviously, Callum Walsh won the fight, but I don't think it was a great performance. I thought it was pretty telling about really how limited his upside truly is. But we'll see. What do they say here? Future outlook. Murtazaliev is set to defend his belt versus Josh Kelly, and Walsh could well position to face the winner. I mean, let me tell you this. Josh Kelly is going to get fucking flatlined by Murtazaliev. And if Callum Walsh ends up jumping to that position next, it's going to be some easy work for Bakram Murtazaliev. Two dudes that have some name recognition, but that's all they have, because neither has a chance against him. A good French fighter who's really sort of under the radar, Bakary Samake, 19-0, 11 KOs. Obviously, France always produces quality fighters. It's just they don't necessarily become big names in the U.S. He potentially might be another one of these fighters, another junior middleweight. Obviously, he's right in the mix for one of the best divisions in boxing. This would be a guy that probably should position himself for a Murtazaliev fight, because that may be the only chance he gets of getting a world title fight. We know currently he's number one ranked for Funduro's title, but he's just being skipped past left, right, and center, which of course the WBC consistently does. Just remember Dillian White when he was a what's wrong with me today? When he was, what's his face? Bronze Bomber. I can't even remember. Oh, Deontay Wilder. When he was Deontay Wilder's mandatory, right? And the WBC just would not sanction that fight at all. And this is similar. They're much more happy to have Funduro there. They don't want to put this unknown, dangerous French fighter anywhere close to him. So it'll be interesting to see if he ever does get a big fight. Then at number 20, one of the early hype job fighters from the U.S., Kermel Moton, obviously with his relationship with Floyd Mayweather, on the onset, he got a lot of hype and a lot of push. The problem is, afterwards, they've really been putting him on a lot of faceless cards where you didn't even know he was fighting. He didn't even get any TV time. They've really kind of dropped the ball in his development, which is kind of disappointing, because it's not like I don't like the kid. It's just obviously he's getting all this attention only because of his connection to Floyd Mayweather. and the fact that he was so young. I think he started pro at 16, even though he's 19 now. Has it been that long? The biggest problem with him is he's kind of like a miniature version of Tank Davis. He's not going to be able to go through multiple weight divisions very easily because he's just not a very big guy. He's not tall, he's not very long. So, like Tank Davis, who's basically just been a two-division boxer, but looks like he could still easily make 130. I think for Kermel Moton, it's going to be a similar situation. Not that he's not going to go on to have a great career and potentially be a world champion. The fights I've seen him fight, he looks great, especially for a young kid. But, we've seen this before when Floyd Mayweather's name carries a lot of clout and really pushes people forward. But are they only walking in Floyd's footsteps? Are they really good when push comes to shove? We'll see. And the truth is, being too connected to Floyd, I don't know if that's the best thing for your career, just mentally and career-wise. But let me know in the comment section below, what do you think? He definitely needs to fight far more, especially since he is such a young kid. He should easily be fighting 4 times a year, 5 times a year against not necessarily killer opponents. He doesn't have to be fighting the best fighters available, but he's got to consistently be in the gym. Then we get Omari Jones, one of the up-and-coming American fighters, 15-0, 13 KOs, 23 years old. Obviously, Golden Boy promoter, Virgil Hunter trainer, a kid that, he's got a bit of that Mark Breland in him. We'll see if he's really got upside. The guy that really below him was somebody people thought probably had more upside, and that's Jai Tucker. But obviously, he already had 1 loss and 1 draw early on in his career and is kind of bouncing back from that. But, as I said, people lose and hurdles happen in your career. It's not so much that you lose, it's what you learn from the loss and how you move forward after it. A guy like Jai Tucker, he could go on to be bigger than Omari Jones, right? And I think skill-wise and potential-wise, he looks like he potentially could, from my perspective. Let me know in the comment section below, who do you think has the best upside out of these 2 fighters? Then we get Vito Melenicki Jr. Oh, he's going to be fighting on this weekend's undercard. Nobody cares. A PBC fighter who was hyped because he was part of the PBC. I guess his dad's a promoter in New Jersey. He's not a bad fighter, but he's just one of these PBC fighters, right? That was hyped because they were part of the PBC. But yet none of the prospects that were part of the PBC have developed into anything. And he's just another example of that. The PBC has done a piss poor job of developing prospects. And that's just a fact, right? You can't really tell me any prospects the PBC has developed. And if Melenicki is the best version you have, well, fuck, that just proves my point completely. Then we get a Canadian fighter I was just talking about the other day and saying that I don't know much about him. And then I saw his name here. I'm like, oh, shit, there you go. Joan Orobio, 16-0, 14 KOs. I think he's also a French fighter living in Canada. 22 years of age. Obviously, he just had a big win versus tough South African fighter, Zolani Chengeni, who was one of the big first step-up fights for Devin Haney back in the day. For Orobi, obviously, he's a power puncher. Going in and beating a slick boxer from South Africa is no small feat. We'll see what he does and what his upside is. Obviously, him being from Canada, I'm hoping he does great. I would love to see another Matthew Hilton, another David Lemieux type of fighter coming out of Canada with great power, exciting style that really grabs people's attention. And it looks like maybe Orobio just might be that kind of fighter. We will see. Jadir Herrera. Oh, yes. Who beat Jadir Herrera again? Oh, Tatumi. Tatumi, who's going to be fighting on that Japanese card in December to become a 130-pound WBA world champion. He bet Yadir Herrera in his amateur career. Wow. Jadir Herrera, obviously one of the exciting young power punching Cuban fighters right now. I talked about this whole class of current Cuban fighters, and it's great. These guys have really went away from the norm from Cuban boxing and become much more boxer punchers. And in boxing, if you want to make money and you want to succeed financially, that's the style to be. Exciting boxer with great power going in there and getting sensational knockouts. That's going to sell. That's going to fucking make people watch, and that's going to fill your pockets. So let's hope Hadia Herrera can continue to do what he's been doing now. Obviously, he's one of the great young fighters at lightweight. Maybe we could potentially see him fight Abdullah Mason or Floyd Schofield, right? Either one of those fights would be fantastic. Him against his more established three belt gold medal winner, who's probably going to beat the IBF champion. I don't know if that's a fight we want to see, but Abdullah Mason and Schofield, those would be good fights. And obviously for the young Cuban, it'd be great to see him get that opportunity. So there we are. There's the top 25 fighters under 25 in boxing today. Let me know if there's anybody that's not on this list. There's nobody off the top of my head that jumps into the list right away, except for that Golden Boy Uzbekistan fighter. And I'm just not sure how old he is. So let me just check, because that kid is great and he should definitely be on this list if he's under 25 years of age. And obviously him being a Golden Boy fighter, he's already been on some big cards, doesn't have many fights yet. Let me see if I can find his name. There's a Roby, number 34 at 140 pounds, Emiliano Vargas, number 36. I think he's a 140-pound fighter. Golden Boy fighter. If I could remember what card he was on, that might make it easier for me to find his name, but let me see. That's the problem with the Kazakhstanians. It's hard to remember how to pronounce their names. So when you're trying to find them, there he is, 115. Also, the guy under him from Kazakhstan as well. He's pretty good. Oh, BoxRec. I just found him, and now you're going to make me fucking log in again. I hate BoxRec. Whoever fucking designed BoxRec, I don't wish ill upon anyone, but I kind of wish ill upon him. Yes, it's fucking me. Quickly, let's go. Oh, that's the problem. That I gotta like go through the fucking aggravation of trying to find him again after I just found him. Ayo, oy vey. So at least now I know where it is. 140 pounds, 130 something. Number 3. There you are, Ruslan Abdullaev. This kid. He must be under 25. Yeah, 23. I'd put this kid on my fucking best fighters under 25 for sure. This kid is a monster. I know he's only had 3 fights so far in his career, but don't let that shit fucking fool you, right? He's already a guy that's being fast tracked and move quick. When you think about his pedigree as an amateur, like, obviously we know BoxRec doesn't give you the whole skew, but like 49-6, that tells you everything you need to know about the level he was as an amateur as well. And you look at the guys he fought. Oh, I lost to fucking the Canadian, Wyatt Sanford, early in his career. Tusanov, yes. Isn't that the guy that's just ranked below him? Come on, you scurvy knave. Hi, y'all. Box Rick. Why, Box Rick? I also think Hayato Tatsumi. Let me just check him out for a second. Because I think Hayato is under 25 as well. And he's literally fighting for a world title on that card in December. Ah, no. 26. So, yeah, so not him. But feel free to leave in the comment section below any fighters that you think deserve to be on this list of the best young up and coming fighters under 25 years of age right now. Obviously, I think there's quite a few people that ESPN probably missed out on. But to be fair, ESPN is not really the Bible of boxing. And I think, they're very American centric and they don't really have a great grasp of boxing globally. So I wouldn't be surprised that there's quite a few people that they probably looked past. But let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. And remember to like, subscribe, and share. Thanks very much.